With the success of SS Successor of the Brady line in 1929, it was clear that much like Germany's Bremen and Europa, the Successor needed a sister ship, or at least a running mate. Hence, the idea of the next Brady superliner at the time, known as Hull S2, was born. Initially, they wanted to give Hull S2 a similar name to Successor. However, they eventually settled for the name New Brunswick. Construction began in 1933 on May 6, and by June the next year, New Brunswick had been launched. However, she was forced to be slightly smaller due to the new idea of having a third running mate, which cuts down steel. SS New Brunswick began her service on July 1st, 1934. In her maiden voyage, she didn't compete for speed, she competed for luxury. On July 5th, 1934, she would reach Southampton in just a few days. With Brady Line's new marketing strategy, she gained a notoriety among world leaders. Many high-class citizens, including as high as Canadian Prime Minister W.L. Mackenzie King, joined her amenities for diplomatic trips or for adventures. However, her civilian career would be cut short as nearly just more than 4 years later, World War II broke out following the German-Soviet invasion of Poland. Being a ship under a nation in the British dominions, unlike American ships, she was instantly drafted into the war. She was given a wartime livery and began service on February 4th, 1940, with carrying troops to Europe. However, this would lead to her capture. While evacuating French soldiers after the surrender of France in June of 1940, she was close enough to German waters while attempting to escape. As for the German aircraft began to attack her. This occurred while departing Le Havre, and eventually 2 U-boats would strike her and HMCS Winnipeg. Miraculously, she was able to survive, but was forced to beach herself and surrender to the Germans. Following the capture of the SS New Brunswick, the Germans would rename her to the SS Munich and change her port of registry to Bremerhaven, and her livery now consisted of different shades of gray. However, the Allies weren't done. While docked in Amsterdam after a fifth voyage into the Baltics, Allied B-17 bombers would begin to attack the port. While most efforts were directly towards the city itself, some attacks were led into the port. While attempting to escape, her engines malfunctioned and was stranded. Allied bombers would start attacking the Munich and later would burst into flames. Following the end of the war, SS Munich was finally gracefully raised on April 8, 1952. Following the raising, questions now arose about the fate of the Munich. After many inspections, it was deemed that despite the punishment from the war, that she was still serviceable for civilian service, if anyone were to restore her. She was finally handed over to the United States lines after being restored in Cherbourg, and she finally became an American. The newly popular SS Columbia began service on May 30th, 1955, and became a semi-popular ship among those who traveled her across the sea. As air travel began to rise in popularity, SS Columbia now faced a challenge in the early 60s. Ultimately, United States Lines decided to keep her but convert her into a full-time cruise ship in 1963. Though it was somewhat profitable sailing mainly in the Caribbean and South America, it was clear that the money was simply not there for Columbia. Ultimately, she stopped service in 1967 and was put on long-term layup. Aside from the breakers, there were some petitions to salvage the ship as a museum ship or a hotel. Ultimately, the efforts to preserve her simply faded away in a while. In 1974, SS Columbia would finally meet her fate. She would be sold to the scrappers that year and ultimately be scrapped alongside Holland American Line's SS New Amsterdam and Union Pacific Line's SS Olson Union in Taiwan. The efforts were finished in October of 1974, and by then most of the physical memory of the Columbia and that of the New Brunswick were gone. But not all. The diner from her time as the New Brunswick was taken by the Americans while being converted into a troop ship in 1939. It was kept in storage, then they set it up at the Calvert Maritime Museum in Solomons, Maryland. While scrapping in Taiwan as Columbia, some parts were preserved, like boats 13, 20, 16, 9, and propeller number 2 are still preserved in the Taiwanese museum. Many postcards still exist, and her plans alongside the plans with SS Successor and SS Nova Scotia were released to the public domain in 2004. And most of all the fun and joyful memories will always be alive, no matter if it was the New Brunswick, Columbia, or even if they were the German shipyard workers on the Munich. She was certainly the beautiful Brunswick.